former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Michael Oren, joining us on the broadcast. Ambassador, thank you for joining in. First of all, I'd like your thoughts on the expanding nature of this conflict. There are mixed messages coming in from both ends. Initially, Prime Minister Netanyahu has indicated that they are looking at a swift and speedy end to this conflict. On the other hand, you have the US President indicating that this could very much take 4 to 5 weeks. I'd like your thoughts.
Well, I think, first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. Thank you for having me on. From Israel's perspective, a 4 or 5 week war against a major military adversary such as Iran with ceasefire destruction is not a long war. In Middle Eastern terms, it's actually a short war. And so I don't see a contradiction there. A long war would be a war such as the one we're fighting against Hezbollah and Hamas, which has continued since October of 2023. That's a long war. Iran is a country that is geographically bigger than France and Germany combined, with a population of 90 million. It has in its arsenal about 2,000 long-range missiles, each one packing about 1,300 kilograms of TNT. One of them just hit Israel a few minutes ago in the north. These take down not just an apartment building, but take down an entire neighborhood. And so this is a huge adversary. Right. And so 4 to 5 weeks to deal with that threat, to eliminate it, would be, I think, would be modest.
Ambassador Oren, would you like to weigh in on the escalatory nature, given that your allies in the Middle East are also getting targeted? For how long will they remain mute spectators to the kind of attacks that are taking place, whether it is UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, a host of US allies in the Middle East?
That's a key question. By shooting missiles at us, Iran doesn't gain anything strategically. It may gain something ideologically. It's fighting, it's killing Jews, firing at the Jewish state. That's very important for their Islamist ideology. But by firing at other countries in the Middle East, whether it's Kuwait or the UAE or even friends of Iran, such as Qatar and Oman, and even Cyprus, which is not even really in the Middle East, but a British base there or an Australian base. It is trying to put pressure on the Trump administration to cease the war. I mean, I think you just had a guest on from Switzerland. I caught the end of the interview, was basically saying that, Switzerland is putting pressure on the United States to end the war, which is precisely what Iran wants to do. Iran also wants to increase the number of American casualties, and that is designed not to put pressure externally on the Trump administration, but to pressurize the administration from American public opinion, which hasn't been very favorable of this war, as you know.
Oren, I'm so sorry because I'm running short of time, pardon me for interrupting you, but given the kind of impact we've seen in terms of flight disruptions, in terms of the impact on oil prices, the Strait of Hormuz being shutting down, do you think that there have been calculation errors over here in terms of the strategic calculations that were made by the United States and Israel?
No, I don't think it's our miscalculation. I think that this was always expected. What the miscalculation may be Iran's, because instead of increasing pressure on the Trump administration, it may create a situation where Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other Middle Eastern countries join in the fight against Iran. Just the UAE and Saudi Arabia together have about 500 fighter jets. That's a very significant force. So this may be a huge miscalculation on the part of the Iranians, and it may be a game changer in terms of the war.
But was Israel and was the United States expecting such kind of a retaliation to come in from Iran, given that the supreme leader was killed and there was an expectation that it will be the end of the Iranian regime?
Well, that's two different questions. I think the expectation was that Iran would fire at other Middle Eastern countries and that Iran would try to close the Straits of Hormuz. First of all, the Iranian regime said it was going to do that and has done that repeatedly in the past. Every time there's been a confrontation between the United States and Iran or Israel and Iran, the Iranians do precisely that. They target other Middle Eastern states and try to close the Straits of Hormuz. Whether there'll be an overthrow of this government, this regime, there'll be a regime change in Iran, is really up to the Iranian people. I think Israel and the United States can create the circumstances in which the Iranian people can once again rise up and hopefully this time succeed in overthrowing that government. But that's not in our hands.
So, Ambassador Oren, put this into perspective for us. What is endgame Iran over here? Is it regime change? Something that the U.S. President, the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth have also denied, or is it the obliteration of the nuclear facilities? What is it that U.S. and Israel are looking at?
Well, again, ideally it would be if we had a different government in Iran and we could go back to the relationship we had with Iran before 1979, the Islamic Revolution. Iran was a close friend of the State of Israel and of the United States. We'd love to go back to there again, but that's not in our hands. It's in the hands of the Iranian people. Barring that, Israel certainly wants to eliminate the threat posed by Iran through these huge missiles, these ballistic long-range missiles, certainly eliminate the nuclear threat. And perhaps if we have to go back to a negotiating table, the United States and Iran, to create a situation where Iran can no longer threaten Israel or any of our Middle Eastern neighbors.
Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, has gone on to comment that this was an attack that U.S. had to carry out because this was for Israel that they did so. How do you respond to the American criticism that's now coming in from the Democrats that why did U.S. have to bear the brunt of this?
Well, there's many different criticisms of this war, but let's say this, just from an Israeli perspective. I can't speak for the United States, and I certainly can't speak for my friend Marco Rubio. And that is to say that Israel was going to act. Israel could not remain passive as Iran developed 30,000 of these massive missiles that would have created not just an existential threat to the State of Israel, but created a situation where Iran would have immunity. It would have a missile umbrella under which it could develop its nuclear arsenal and continue to support terror around the world, and we would not be able to respond to it. We'd have these missiles literally pressed to our head. So Israel is going to react sooner or later, irrespective of what the United States did.
So, Ambassador Oren, my last question. The Pentagon has reported that they have no intelligence suggesting that Iran indeed would have targeted the United States, and yet the U.S. went ahead with that attack. In fact, the U.S. President making that claim has been completely dismissed. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think you look at history, and I'm not going to be a spokesman for the United States. I'm not even an American citizen, even though my accent sounds like it.
I understand, but this is a joint strike.
It is, dude. Okay, it's fine. And that is the Iranians since 1979 have committed aggression after aggression after aggression against the United States of America, beginning with the taking over of the American embassy in 1979, the killing of hundreds of Americans by the Iranian regime throughout the 1980s, through the Iraq War, the launching of nearly 200 attacks against American bases and other military assets in the Middle East during the last 2.5 years. Attempted terrorist attacks on American soil, including a purported attempted assassination of the President of the United States. And by the way, attempted assassination of me when I was ambassador in Washington. They were going to try to kill me in Washington. This is an extremely dangerous enemy state. And the fact that it has not posed a strategic threat to America right now, you could have used the same example against Nazi Germany in the 1930s and 40s, which never threatened the United States, but certainly had to be destroyed.
All right, we leave it at that. Many thanks to you, Ambassador Michael
Oren. Thank you.